Hello Forrest, hope you're doing well. Today I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I first got into the hunt for your treasure and the first impressions that I had when I first encountered your poem. I heard about the hunt for the first time in June of 2017 when I came across articles dealing with the disappearance of Paris Wallace and the recovery of his body. The Following up from that, I found articles that said more about your treasure, how you decided to hide it, and the circumstances in which you decided to do it, and the statement of the poem itself. This totally captured my imagination right from the very beginning. From the time I was a little kid, I was a puzzle maker, a puzzle solver. Even my career as a researcher in computing is, in a sense, built around the idea of defining and solving puzzles. So I had some spare time, or I made some spare time, and over a couple of consecutive evenings in June, I think they were Thursday, Friday, evenings, 2 consecutive evenings, 22nd of June or so. I went through the poem and with that in mind started looking at maps, Google Earth, just looking through the sorts of terrain that are there, looking at all the possible places that I could find with names of hot springs and canyons and the like, just to get a feel for it. Within 3 days, I had a solution of sorts. I won't say where. I've told you by email. But this solution brought me to the point where I was fairly confident all the way up to, but not including, the location of the blaze. Many people have claimed these things in the past. Many people have similar stories. Many people have acted on this. And in my case, being half a world away in Japan, I thought that would have to be the end of it, until my wife suggested that I take the kids there to New Mexico, which is my search state, to see what was there and to test the idea. We were looking for a possibility for a vacation for them. My wife couldn't come, so it would be just me and the 2 boys. And so without too much expectation, we made it as a theme around which we would build a vacation in the Four Corners area. Not just New Mexico, but Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. Okay, so since today I wanted to focus on the poem itself, I thought I would just take my copy of The Thrill of the Chase, read from it, and tell you my impressions that I had when first reading the poem. Now, when I came across the poem, it was in isolation. I didn't have a chance to pick up the book until the 3 of us had arrived in Santa Fe, where I got it from Collected Works bookstore. So all the way up to that point, I had essentially nothing but the poem to go by. I didn't read much from the blogs. Initially, I didn't even take any information at all from the blogs until I was a fair way through my interpretation of the poem. And only then, when I thought I had found something, did I start doing searches to see whether other people had been in my search area, to see what other people had to say about it. And there, that was helpful because I was able to find a few photos here and there that gave me some impression about what the terrain would be like. Okay, so you have been on record as saying that that the poem is the main thing, that all you really need to do to find the treasure is the poem, even though at other times I think you have said that you advise people to go between the poem and the book, read the poem, read the book, back and forth, until you have a better, some sort of idea of where you think it might be. Okay, so let's get into the poem. So let me read the things stanza by stanza and then and then give you my impressions. Okay, so let's go through the poem. First stanza. As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. It seems like a straightforward introduction to me. There are a few things that we can draw from this. As I have gone alone in there, to me emphasizes that this puzzle is personal to you, the details are known only to you, that they do not depend on the cooperation, the knowledge, or the trust of any other person. You talk about your secret where, secret location. Again, the impression that I have is that we can be certain that whatever choices you made in designing the puzzle, in writing the poem, and even though I hadn't the book at that time, writing your book, that we could be certain that we could use this knowledge, the fact that it's secret, in eliminating possibilities. If we have an interpretation that would require you to divulge some information or trust that somebody would keep quiet about what you've done, then I think the impression that I had, even at that time, was that any such thing could be safely eliminated. If one's solve required or even risked someone else finding out some details or getting some information that they could use later on to piece out where you may have been, where you've gone, or even when you've done it, anything at all, it would detract from the statement of this first stanza. So the point that I got from the stanza was essentially this. And a secondary point was it revealed, in the poem that is, it revealed the extent to which you would bend the language, so to speak. The word where is not used as a synonym as a spot or a location or a place. When you talk about your secret where, grammatically you're using it as if it were a straight noun rather than an adjective, not an adjective, an adverb, which is what it is grammatically. So it's a little warning, I think, to us to be prepared to look for creative usage of words. So the next stanza, begin it where warm waters halt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. So some impressions for this one. From the first surface of it, it looks like a set of instructions. It's written in an imperative style. Begin it, do it, take it, put in. You're giving us things to do in sequence. The message here involves locations. Where warm waters halt. Then take it, that is, take your quest, I guess. In the canyon down, again, another location. Presumably, canyon down is something that is clear in sequence from having located warm waters halt. Then not far, but too far to walk tells us how to do it, and it emphasizes that these two clues, at least, should not be geographically distant. They should not be stretched. It should be a connection which is clear. You're encouraging us to keep our locations in the interpretation of the puzzle fairly close by, or at least the sequencing should be fairly straightforward, not too many possibilities, you know. If, for instance, a particular location had 10 different canyons, it would be difficult to say and take it in the canyon down when there were a plethora of possibilities. So we can assume that there's, I think, a canyon that makes the most sense from this particular location. Put in below the home of Brown, to me, is the hardest clue in the poem. Home of Brown could be anything from a real home or a house to an area where something could be found, or just some strange thing altogether. So it really does invite us to understand what it is that Brown should be, and then on top of that you've made it even more mysterious by capitalizing the B. Put in below gives an interesting impression as well. If you think of it in terms of what you would do with a canoe, putting in below means you stop, get out of your vehicle, canoe or car as it may be, and do something. And then from there, go somewhere else. So putting in, this is something I had to look up in the dictionary, because I wanted to make sure that I could trust my own interpretation of the word. To me, putting in always meant temporary, that you go put in to port for a bit till the storm blows over, or until the next day, and then go out. So it suggests a lot more than just moving from location to location. From the beginning, it suggested to me that there was something that had to be done below the home of Brown, and then to leave, to continue. Okay, also, I thought that if there was any particular place where one would leave a car and then continue again somehow, that it would be at the home of Brown. Take it in the canyon down, not far but too far to walk, suggests a distance for which a car would be convenient. And then putting in is, again, strange, because the question then arose as to whether or not you would leave the home of Brown area by car or on foot. I do want to say another thing about Warm Waters Halt while we're here. Is it Warm Waters Halt, like the New Mexico fishing regulations would have it, warm waters? Or is it Warm Waters Halt? In the first stanza, you have already indicated that you're willing to play with words. And so the associations, when you've got collections of words, sequencings of words, one right after the other, how we group them gives us different interpretations altogether. And I must say that for this one, I used a non-standard grouping. I have Warm Waters Halt rather than Warm Waters Halt. This is something that I think in the first stanza you've taught us to at least consider. Not saying right or wrong, but we have to be open to this. So it has an interesting sense. By the time you get to the end of the second paragraph, as a reader, we feel a little bit unsettled, because we start to see that the possibilities of interpretation have grown, and also the difficulties of finding ways to match those two main clues, Warm Waters Halt, or where Warm Waters Halt, and home of Brown, onto the map, have become, quite difficult. Then the next stanza, from there it's no place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. So we have learned from the previous stanza that we are moving sequentially from location to location. So the first sentence, from there it's no place to the meek, we can maybe assume that we are again to move to a new location, to a place, no place for the meek. Then the end is ever drawing nigh, is the first reference to our target perhaps, and these words, drawing and nigh, draw, if you look it up in the dictionary, has to be one of the most overladen words in the English language. There are so many interpretations of the word draw and drawing going all the way back. So we have then branchings upon branchings of possible interpretations. Nigh as well has some interesting secondary interpretations, older interpretations, which further complicate things. There'll be no paddle up your creek. People have interpreted this to mean there'll be a creek somewhere there, that it's not something that would be navigable, you can't take a boat up it. I interpret that as in that way, with some additions. There'll be no paddle up your creek, but the next line suggests something in its place. Just heavy loads and water high. So it's like we're substituting for the paddling something else. I don't know if anybody on the blogs or on other YouTube channels has drawn attention to that, but this is something that I think is very subtle and something that we can take advantage of. Heavy loads, water high. So water high, maybe the most popular interpretation for that is a waterfall or some other source of high water. And heavy loads, you name it. So between stanzas 2 and stanzas 3, there's a certain complexity that's rising here. Stanza 2, I think, is the first opportunity, if you view the format of the poem in a straightforward sense. It's the locator of the, or the anchor point of the beginning of the search. Initially, I'm here based in Japan. I have to displace myself from my current location here in Japan to the rough vicinity of where it is that I should be searching for the treasure. And I need some anchor point at which to arrive. Like, where is going to be my first step from home to a particular location from where I should start looking for the puzzle. If I'm going to do this, I need to be looking at the map at the very largest scales. People who are approaching this would want to know which state, or if they are, if we even assume that the state is one of our favorite from among the four, even within the state we need to know where this should be. So I think the second stanza, where warm waters halt, and put in below the home of Brown, refer to locations which may be findable on a map. Whereas in the third stanza, I didn't have, I should say, the confidence that you could do the same for that. Once you are down on the ground in the right location, then things become potentially more complex. There could be more possibilities. So then, if you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. But tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So now we've had second, third, fourth stanza, all written in an imperative style, an instructional style. You've told us given us instructions which presumably can get us to the right location, which may be your secret where. Then, If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. Those are the last of 10 consecutive lines, starting with begin at where warm waters halt, ending with look quickly down your quest to cease, that take us from a starting reference point, which presumably is a landmark on the map, something that can be understood at a large scale by the little girl from India or the older guy in Japan, down to a very specific location where we imagine that we would be in the vicinity of the chest. So, like golf style, you can imagine our tee shot brings us from home to the first location where we go, and then progressively we would expect the steps to get shorter and shorter, more and more precise, until finally when we get down to heavy loads, water high, you've been wise and found the blaze, that we're just putting towards the final hole. So in all of this, I should say that in my experience I had an interpretation, let's call it that instead of a solve, an interpretation that brought me to the ends of just the heavy loads and water high. And I did not have the blaze. But I had some place to go, and that's why had the basis of a vacation. Some particular place to travel to amongst the other places that we were planning to visit in the Four Corners area. And we would go, check it out, have fun, scratch our heads, and then continue. Is basically what the plan was. Now, a lot has been said in other areas about how the treasure could have been hidden, what's its relationship to the blaze, what the possible interpretations of heavy loads and water high could be. I'm going to leave that aside for now, essentially because I can't get too much into it without just giving away details of my solve. And I said already in the first episode that that's not the point of the videos I want to make. But impressions so far for these last three stanzas, stanzas 2, 3, and 4, even though the instructions are cryptic, they are written with an underlying style of support. The sequencing is clear, very straightforward, place to place, step to step, and it gives a sense of assurance that you're obscuring details and allowing for multiple interpretations, but at the core, it's in a very supportive style. You're not hiding the information in a way that some other treasure hunt books, such as Masquerade, which came out in 1979, which was the first treasure hunt book that I ever attempted. Unlike these particular styles, we don't even know where the information is. You've told us right up front where the information is. You said it's in your poem, and your poem is right there. And in the parts which stanzas 2, 3, and 4, they're clearly laid out to bring us to a location. That part is obvious. And within that setting, you are giving us some interpretational challenges. Where warm waters halt, home of brown, no place for the meek, drawing nigh, heavy loads. What's heavy loads? What's water high? What's the blaze? So that impressed me. I have looked at a number of treasure hunt books in my time. They all try to obscure even what the basics are, relying on messages to be encrypted or hidden within images. You've come right out, laid it to us in very, very simple terms, and we know where the puzzles are with relative to the poem. They come into the interpretation of individual phrases, which if we can put them onto the map in the right places brings us to the secret location. Stanza 5. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know. I've done it tired, and now I'm weak. This particular stanza to me does not seem like it's carrying much information as to where to be or where to go. But I think the question of why would somebody want to put a fortune in gold in a box and hide it somewhere in the mountains for people to find has been asked by people. And it's interesting to me that you chose to address that in the poem. Why is it that you must go and leave a fortune for other people? And answers I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. It's like, to me, it says that you have a motivation for it that goes beyond money or profit, that you've been through life, you've met its challenges. It is something that this stanza is something that indicates that your values are not necessarily the same as those who might be my generation or younger, who might be out there combing the mountains looking for these treasures. I think what you have done is very much of a profoundly generous thing, which I've seen a lot of criticism of on the blogs and in various places, which is hard to deal with. I think when somebody is as successful as you have been financially, people probably have trouble understanding or appreciating what it is that you might consider valuable to do with the money that you have raised for yourself in your career and lifetime, and where your priorities might be. So anyway, it's interesting that you have addressed it in this way. This is some point that really I want to come back to later in another video. So finally, stanza 6, so hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. I think, personally, this stanza has given me the most trouble. For a long time, I could not come up with an interpretation of if you are brave and in the wood that satisfied me. In stanzas 2 and 3, in order to find a particular location to search, I had to come up with some very firm and not obvious interpretations of what these things mean, just to get to a spot. I was not exploring and then trying to fit these clues to the things that I saw. I needed, in order to justify a trip all the way from Japan, I needed to have something clear in mind in order to justify the time and the expense to go, even as a vacation with the children. But I had never come up with something satisfying for brave and in the woods. Sure, brave, I mean, going up into the mountains and there may be bears about. In the wood, there are plenty of trees around. Is this what you mean? I don't think you were wasting words. I think everything here in the poem is there for a reason. First 5 stanzas seem to be there, whether the reasons are to support the puzzle itself or because of something personal to you that you wanted to say. This one bothered me. And then your effort will be worth the cold. Again, mountains are cold. Is it anything more than that? I don't know. But again, this was maybe if I felt insecure about my solve, of course I knew that I had to go and find the blaze, but I always had this nagging feeling, what is the cold, what is the wood? And I think that the reason why in the trips that I've taken, that I've come back empty-handed, I think my impression then and now is that without a full understanding of everything, I don't think we can expect to find it. I think we can go, we could probably be in the right spot, we could be very close, but with the complexity of the terrain that I experienced on the first trip with the boys in June of 2017, with the complexity that we found there, with the myriad of possible hiding spots, the poem itself does not hold all the information we need. I think if I had to guess what was your ninth or last clue, in however they are accounted, I would say Raven in the Wood, not the blaze. To me, that's your clue 9. I personally don't really care much about how we number them. What clue 1 is, what clue 8 is, what clue 7 is, meaningless. I think the whole poem is important. I don't think you were wasting any words or any time in it. I think we need to understand all of it in order to really feel secure about where it is that we're going and where it is that we should be looking precisely for the treasure. Okay, so just to conclude overall impressions, I think the poem is written in a style which makes it seem that you are helping us to find your treasure. That you are not, you may be giving us multiple interpretations as a defense against people just finding it very quickly in the first month or two, someone coming across it or somebody solving it very quickly and just going and taking it. You need to protect the treasure, and that has to be protected by, that has to happen by allowing enough branches to distract people away from what the correct path might be. But it's done in what seems to be a very principled way, in a framework of support. If you can get past a particular clue with the right interpretation, it brings you to a spot where the next clue may make sense for you. I think this is wonderful. It's a totally different character than what you might find in a puzzle book like Masquerade. It's one where perhaps an experience with the classical treasure hunting books, armchair treasure hunting books, may put one at a disadvantage. I would suspect, if I had to guess, that you didn't pay much attention to any other treasure hunts that had existed in the past, that you had your own idea as to what you wanted to do, and that we as searchers need to discover it. So that's it for today, I think. Take care. Have a good evening.